everyone. Ready for a deep dive into something really wild?
Not ready?
Today we're going to be talking AI.
Ooh, fun.
But not just like any AI, you know?
Right.
This is about like a company that came out of nowhere.
Okay.
A Chinese company called DeepSeek,
I've heard the name.
and they're shaking things up.
Shaking things up, hell.
Well, that's what we're going to find out, right? We're basing this deep dive on this book by Steve Russell called The Rise of DeepSeek. And honestly, it's pretty wild.
What's so wild about it?
Well, this company, DeepSeek,
Yeah.
they went from like just an idea to like a total industry disruptor.
Wow.
In just 1 year.
That's crazy fast for AI.
I know. Like usually these things take way longer, right?
Yeah, usually you're talking like years of research and development.
Yes, exactly. So that's what we're going to like unpack today.
Okay.
How did they do it?
Right.
What makes them so different? And what does it mean for the future of like the whole AI landscape?
Those are the big questions.
Big questions. And, you know, like from what I've been reading,
Yeah.
it's like a total underdog story.
Underdog, how so?
Well, they're taking on these huge companies.
Like Google and OpenAI.
Yeah, exactly. And they're doing it in a way that nobody saw coming.
I'm intrigued.
Like they're all about like this open source revolution and making AI super affordable.
Open source. That's pretty unusual for a tech company these days.
I know, especially one that's moving this fast, right?
Right.
And, you know, it's kind of making some of those big tech giants pretty nervous.
I bet. So where do we start with this story?
Well, it all starts with the founder of DeepSeek,
All right.
this guy Liang Wenfeng.
Okay.
And the book paints him as like this visionary. He actually comes from a finance background.
Finance. Not what I expected.
I know, right? He was like a quant fund expert.
Meaning?
Basically, he used like crazy complex algorithms to like predict the stock market.
Oh, wow. So he's already used to working with like massive amounts of data.
Exactly. But you know, the thing is, he wasn't just some techie who like saw an opportunity to make a quick buck.
Okay.
He was actually like genuinely frustrated with the state of AI.
Really? Why is that?
He felt like it was too expensive, too exclusive.
In what way?
Like only big companies and governments really had access to it.
Right.
And he also felt like it wasn't living up to its potential.
Potential to do what?
To like actually benefit humanity, you know?
That's a pretty big goal.
I know, right?
So he wanted to like change things,
Yeah.
make AI more accessible to everyone.
Yeah, basically. I mean, there's this quote in the book where he says,
What's quote?
"The AI industry has become an arms race for data and dollars. It is time to change the game, not play it." You can tell he's not messing around.
Yeah, he sounds pretty serious about shaking things up.
Yeah, totally. And he started by choosing a really interesting location for DeepSeek's headquarters.
Oh, where'd they set up shop?
Chengdu.
Chengdu. That's not exactly Silicon Valley.
I know, it was a deliberate choice, you know.
Like they wanted to distance themselves from the traditional tech hubs.
Exactly. Like they were signaling that they were going to do things differently.
I can see that. And then what? They get to work building their AI.
Oh, yeah. They developed this AI model called R1.
Check.
And the book describes the launch event like this meticulously orchestrated spectacle.
Sounds fancy.
That it was.
Like Steve Jobs unveiling the first iPhone.
Wow. So they were going for a big splash.
Yeah. They wanted to grab everyone's attention.
And did they?
Oh, yeah. R1 was not just like some incremental improvement.
Oh.
It was a total game changer.
In what way? What could it do that was so different?
Okay, so imagine this. Analyzing like a decade's worth of financial data.
Okay. Yeah.
In seconds.
No way.
I know, right?
That's insane.
Yeah, and it freaked out like the whole financial world.
I bet. That must be what caused that DeepSeek dip that Russell talks about in the book.
Yeah. Investors were like, oh no, this is going to change everything.
He probably will. And that was just like one example of what R1 could do.
What else could it do?
It could like summarize academic papers.
Okay.
And then turn those summaries into Shakespearean sonnets.
Wait, what? Shakespearean sonnets?
Yeah.
How is that even useful?
Well, it's an example of what they call generative AI.
Okay.
And like, even though sonnets might seem kind of random,
Yeah.
this capability has like huge implications.
Like what?
Think about it.
Right.
Automatically generating creative content, translating languages with like crazy nuance, even writing code.
So this is like beyond just analyzing data. This is like AI that can create.
Exactly. The possibilities are kind of endless.
That's both exciting and a little scary.
Totally. But remember, Liang's whole thing was about making AI accessible to everyone.
Right. How'd they actually do that?
Well, they did something that, like, nobody expected.
What?
They made R1 open source.
Open source? You mean they just, like, gave away their technology?
Yep.
That doesn't sound like a very good business strategy.
I know, right? But Liang believed that AI would advance faster and have a greater impact if it was like a shared resource.
So a collaborative effort.
Exactly. He wanted to like democratize AI.
Wow, that's a pretty bold move.
And it totally shook up the entire industry.
I bet. The big companies must freaked out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially companies like OpenAI.
Yeah.
They'd built their whole business around like proprietary models, you know?
Right, keeping everything secret.
Yeah, and charging big bucks for access.
So DeepSeek comes along and just like totally flips the script.
What was their reaction? Did they just ignore them?
Oh, no. According to the book, it was a mix of disbelief and straight up panic.
I can imagine.
Like, some tried to write them off as like a novelty.
Sure.
But the thing is, R1 was just too good.
Too powerful to ignore.
Exactly. And, you know, even though it's open source, running these massive AI models, it still costs money.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Especially with all the computing power they need.
So how did DeepSeek make R1 affordable?
That's the crazy part.
Okay.
Remember how we said OpenAI charged like 15 per $1 million tokens?
Yeah, that's a lot.
DeepSeek.
Yeah.
55 cents?
Wait, what?
55 cents for the same amount of processing power?
Are you serious?
Dead serious.
That's insane.
It was a total game changer.
Especially for like startups and researchers, you know.
Oh, yeah. Anyone who couldn't afford those crazy fees.
DeepSeek was like, here's AI for everyone.
Wow.
No wonder those investors were freaking out.
Yeah, the ones who had bet on those other companies.
Right. And like, think about the companies that make the hardware for this stuff.
Like NVIDIA?
Yeah, NVIDIA and ASML.
Their stock prices must have taken a hit.
Oh, yeah, big time. The book talks about how DeepSeek's software was so efficient that it could actually reduce demand for expensive hardware.
So it wasn't just the software companies that were disrupted?
Nope. It was like a ripple effect through the whole tech industry.
It's kind of crazy how one company could have such a huge impact.
I know, right? And it brings up some interesting geopolitical questions, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Remember the book mentioned how the U.S. government was trying to limit China's access to advanced AI technology?
Oh, yeah, with those export controls on computer chips and stuff.
Exactly. But DeepSeek kind of sidestepped all that.
Yeah.
By focusing on software.
Right. So it's like those restrictions might have actually backfired.
Pushed them to be even more innovative.
That's kind of ironic, right?
Yeah, big time. It's a perfect example of how you can't always control innovation by just like cutting off access to hardware.
Sometimes it just pushes people to find new solutions.
Exactly. So DeepSeek shakes things up.
They're like the rebels of the AI world.
Yeah, and what did the big companies do? Just sit there and watch?
Definitely not.
No.
The book goes into how OpenAI, Google, Meta, they all went into overdrive.
Scrambling to catch up.
Yet some tried to ramp up their own research and development.
Right.
Like, let's throw more money at this problem.
Hoping to, like, close the gap.
Yeah, and others started looking for partnerships.
Makes sense.
Like, we need to team up if we want to compete with these guys.
Did any of them try to go open source like DeepSeek?
A few did.
Oh, yeah?
But it's not that easy.
Right.
DeepSeek had already built up this whole ecosystem around R1.
Yeah, like a community of developers.
Exactly. All these people contributing to its development.
It wasn't just about the code itself.
No, it was about that collaborative spirit.
Oh, that's hard to replicate.
You can't just like flip a switch and suddenly be open source.
It's a whole different way of thinking about technology.
And DeepSeek was already way ahead of the game.
Yeah, this whole story is like David versus Goliath.
Except David wins.
And Goliath has to like completely rethink their whole strategy.
It's amazing.
And it's not just about the tech itself, right? DeepSeek brought up these big questions about how we develop and share powerful technologies.
And how we regulate them.
That's the tricky part.
Oh, yeah, because how do you control something that's open source and constantly evolving?
Yeah, that's a real head scratcher for government.
That's what we're going to talk about next.
All right, let's dive into the regulatory side of things. All right, so where do we even begin with like regulating this thing?
Well, it's definitely a challenge, right?
It seems like a total nightmare.
I mean, traditionally,
Yeah.
governments have tried to control this kind of tech through things like export controls.
Right, like limiting the hardware.
Exactly.
But DeepSeek kind of showed how that can backfire.
Yeah, they just innovated their way around it.
So what now? What are governments doing to, like, catch up?
Well, some experts are pushing for international agreements.
Oh, really? Like global rules for AI?
Exactly. Like, think of it like the treaties we have for nuclear weapons
Okay.
or climate change.
So something that everyone agrees on.
Yeah. The idea is to establish some kind of global standards for AI.
Makes sense, but like what would those standards even look like?
Well, the book mentions a few key areas.
Mm-hmm.
Ethical guidelines, for one.
Like making sure AI isn't used for bad stuff.
Right. Making sure it's developed and used in a way that aligns with, like, human values.
Okay, that's a big one.
Then there's transparency.
Like knowing how these AI systems actually work.
Exactly, because right now it's kind of like a black box.
And then, of course, there's the question of accountability.
Oh, yeah, big one. Who's responsible when things go wrong?
Because, let's face it, with any powerful tech,
Yeah.
there's always the potential for misuse.
That's the scary part.
And the book talked about some pretty serious risks.
Like what kind of stuff?
Like using R1 to create deepfakes.
Oh, yeah, those are getting crazy realistic.
And even autonomous weapon systems.
That's a whole other level of scary.
It's like a sci-fi movie come to life.
And it's happening right now.
So yeah, we've got governments trying to figure out how to regulate this thing, companies scrambling to adapt, and the potential for like amazing breakthroughs,
Right.
but also some serious consequences.
It's a lot to take in.
It's mind-blowing, really.
DeepSeek is definitely shaking things up.
Yeah, they force us to rethink everything about AI.
And what it means for the future.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about after this deep dive?
I think the biggest thing is we're at a turning point with AI.
Okay.
DeepSeek's story shows us that the future of this tech, it's going to be way more unpredictable than we ever imagined.
And probably a lot more complicated.
Definitely.
So what can we do?
Well, we need to stay informed, stay engaged, and be willing to ask tough questions.
Because this is happening whether we're ready for it or not.
Exactly. And the future of AI isn't just going to be decided by governments and big companies.
This is going to be up to all of us.
So stay curious, stay informed.
Okay.
And most importantly, stay engaged in the conversation about how we want to shape this technology.
Because it's going to shape our world.
For better or worse.
Well, that's a wrap for our deep dive into DeepSeek.
It's been a wild ride.
Totally. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did.
And hopefully a little bit thought-provoking.
Until next time.
Keep exploring.
Keep learning.
And keep diving deep.